Andor, that wasn't the finale, right? There's still one more episode.
If it's only one more episode, that's really sad.
Maybe there's two.
Oh my God, that's depressing because that last episode was fucking dope.
It ended in a great spot too. I'm looking it up right now. Um, it was a trip. I was rewatching with my kids, right? Because they're trying to
oh
get
my
caught up.
God, there's only
Oh,
six, dude.
there's 12 episodes.
What?
There's 12 episodes.
Oh, you're right. I'm looking at Wikipedia.
Yeah,
Only six of
yeah. They run all the way through the 23rd of November.
excellent. I was gonna
Yeah,
say good.
and
Whew.
it's listed for season two also, so that's promising.
Nice.
Um,
Good.
but yeah, it looks number one. Yeah, it's beautiful. It looks like, and I said this from the first
You did.
like episode. I mean, it looks like a movie. As soon as it starts, it feels legit.
Yes.
Even without knowing plot, without knowing what's going on, it just feels like it's going to be good.
One of my other friends actually went as far to say it puts everything else to shame as far as Disney Plus shows. So he's loving it.
Yeah,
What do you think?
it's different though. Like I can't compare it to the MCU shows
Hmm.
because there's a lightness to those that um, even WandaVision, had a lightness to it, and even Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a lightness to it that Andor just will not have. Right? It's not intended to be a particularly fun show. So, um, but knowing that, even the Mandalorian, I mean, Mandalorian has the fun aspect to it. You know all the Grogu stuff, and it's just different. It's so different than anything that's on Disney Plus as far as the shows go.
Yeah,
If even if you took Netflix's Daredevil, which was a pretty heavy duty show, all considering, or even Punisher, um, there's still some moments of lightness in there that Andor really doesn't have. Like I almost was expecting a little bit when we met his mother-ish character,
right,
and then that never we haven't seen her since the third episode, fourth episode.
right. I think it was the third. Third, yeah, because the third is when
I
they
think
take
so
off.
too.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting too, is that actually the last three episodes we haven't seen them delve into his past at all. It felt like that was going to be a big part of the story, and then it was just over. Like after he got kidnapped off that planet, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen him look for his sister anymore. Like there's a lot of stuff from the beginning of the show that's kind of been left hanging. But knowing that it's 12 episodes, I'm not even worried about it. That's a whole lot of content to be able to go back on.
I
Um,
cannot believe. Okay, this is actually a good sign. For some reason, I thought I just watched episode five. I just watched episode six.
yeah,
That's a good
the
sign.
one with the light show in the sky.
Yes, that was gorgeous.
Oh man, yeah, that was amazing. It's funny, like if you think about spectacles as far as the Disney Plus shows go, um, like WandaVision had the big spectacle fight at the end, and that's actually for me kind of one of the places that WandaVision lost it a little bit.
Agreed.
Like they didn't kind of hold up there, and the effects in She-Hulk haven't necessarily been great. Like those haven't held up super well. Um, so to see them, and it's a different franchise, right? I would actually expect that Marvel would have as much, if not more, money than Star Wars at this point. But if they have the same budget, Star Wars is spending it in the right place.
Yeah, and I think I think in Marvel's defense, it's probably being spread across more properties.
For sure.
Than
That's
Star
fair.
Wars.
That's fair. That's fair. Because even with Star Wars shows, there's four now, as far as live action shows go. Because if you get into the animated, you've got the Bad Batch.
Right.
then you would have Mandalorian, Boba Fett, this Andor, Ahsoka, which Favreau has said he thinks is Filoni's best work ever. So I'm stoked to see that. If that's to be believed, it's going to be pretty insane. All right. Welcome to the All Pop No Culture podcast. I'm your host this week, Kevin. I am joined by Andrew. Everybody else is out. There's a chance we'll get some Andy, but it seems like we see that every week. He doesn't show up. Pete's got life issues going on, so he's working on that. Sends his regards, wishes he was here. Kim's probably still getting, nookie and has better things to do, so I don't blame her. If anybody liked me that much, I'd be out too. But yeah, so we're here. We took last week off. And I think we'll jump right into it because the reason we ended up taking last week off is on a whim on Friday night. My wife and I got tickets to the New York City Comic-Con, and I texted Andrew and said, dude, you should come to New York City Comic-Con since you live in New York City. And that is what happened. And that was our entire day. And by the end of the day, we were like, maybe we should just skip recording. So we're here. And New York City Comic-Con in itself is a tale. For us, it was an adventure. I haven't been to a con that big ever. And there were three reasons that I wanted to go. So there was a Smallville panel early in the day. There was a huge Star Trek panel in the early afternoon. And then in the evening, it finished with finished with a Back to the Future panel. And so I got there well before the panel, and you did not get there before the Smallville panel, and that I think is your story to tell. So if you want to fire that one off, we can start there and then head into Smallville.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, back in college, I joined this thing called Equinox International. It was a MLM, multi-level marketing thing. And I learned from that lesson that if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That was way back in 96. Fast forward to mother flippin' 2022. And I was staying in a hotel room at the Palmer House Hilton. It's the oldest hotel in the country. And the reason why I was staying there for like only $200 for like 3 nights was because I was supposed to go to a presentation for Hilton Grand Vacations. So if Hilton gets mad at me, sorry. So basically, I got talked into signing up for a timeshare. And basically what I understood from this whole thing was and if you want to use that little bleep thing, if you want to, like when I say the name, that's fine. But if you don't, then whatever. Anyway, I got talked into it, and I thought I was going to be able to stay at any hotel in that chain. But as I'm reading the literature and I'm actually like poking around the website, I'm realizing no, you can't. I mean, you can, but you're going to like lose points, and you have to basically. And some of these. Anyway, the flexibility sucked. So basically, the reason why I missed Smallville was because 7 days later, the night before the Comic-Con, I'm reading my paperwork and I'm like the violins are screeching in my head, and I realize I have 7 business days to cancel this contract. So you best believe I got up early, went to FedEx, printed out like the contract stuff, typed up a letter, signed it, ran to the post office, like certified overnight, whatever that letter, and got it all done, knowing I was going to be late to Comic-Con. But I'm sorry, it's like, do I see Smallville or do I save myself like 20 grand and misery? Yep, I just said the damn, it was a lot of money. Not all at once, obviously, I'm not loaded, but yeah, it was going to be a life sentence of hell. So anyway, good news is after sending that letter and then sending one on Monday overnight FedEx, I sent 2 of them. They came back on Wednesday and were like, yes, we got your letter. So we are processing your cancellation. So let this be a warning. Um, they're good, man. I don't think I'm that emotional, but like I got caught up. I was like, I could go to Vegas for like a month and like and after I'm done paying everything, I'm just all I gotta pay is maintenance fees, but I have a place to stay anywhere I want. No, dude, it's smoke and mirrors and a bit weird because here's the last thing I'll say. I didn't like the fact that they didn't tell me that I had 7 days. I had to go to a website and then a Facebook group where they're like, it was literally called like it's a Facebook group for people who have been victims. And they're like, you have time, save yourself. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm so glad I decided to read my paperwork. So that was the ordeal. And I was embarrassed to tell Kevin and your lovely, beautiful wife. But and I think the first thing you guys said was like, dude, like, why would you do that? But anyway, I did it and I got out of it and I consider myself a survivor. I'm gonna let you talk in a second, but I just have to say also to everyone listening that man, it was so cool to meet Kevin for the first time, like in person. Like it was, I was legitimately like I was just chilling, you know, I get this text and he's like, yo, like, are you going to Comic-Con? And I'm like, I wasn't, but I will now, you know. And kudos to Comic-Con too for actually setting up like a clearinghouse or whatever for people who want to go at the last minute. So if because it usually sells out way in advance, but people
Yeah.
were able to sell their tickets in an official forum and it was all done and it was all above board. So what a beautiful weekend. So thank you for letting me give that first intro. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
One more
absolutely.
thing. So when I actually get to Comic-Con late, and by the way, Smallville, as you guys know, is like one of my favorite shows of all time. I literally get to like the door of like the panel. It's already started. And the lady at the door is like, yeah, we're closed. And my face must have went like I was literally like I was like running around the damn venue for probably a good 10 minutes trying to find the place. I finally find it, and then they tell me I can't go. You know, I was just dejected. So then I went to like the back and like people were kind of going out. I'm just like, you ingracious mother. Like, why would you leave before the panel's
Yeah.
over? And then like this one guy at the door, her, you know, basically was like, and hopefully he don't get in trouble, but there's no way to prove it because like a lot of people anyway, this one guy, when I told him my story that like they wouldn't let me in, he was just like, so I was like, what? So I go in, and then the best part about it, this is a good transition. The best part about it, this is a big room, guys. This
Yeah,
is a
so it was
big
it's just a big room.
room, okay? Yes, ladies and gentlemen of this podcast, okay? I sit down, really excited to meet Kevin and Brienne. That's Brienne, right? Did I say it right?
Yep.
Yeah. Really excited. And then, dude, literally, like, I think like 2 rows ahead of me, and to the right, I see them. Like of all the places it was fate. Just like you know the names of the episodes of Ring of Fire or Ring of Power of Rings, whatever. Coincidences
And
happen.
Andor, yeah.
Yes, it's like that was meant to happen for us to be that close to for the meeting. So anyway, I'm done. Thank you for letting me rant. Oh my god, it was a great weekend. Go.
Yeah, so the what you missed in the Smallville panel, so you literally made like half of the panel. So the first half of the panel was moderated. So there was some dude sitting up there asking them questions, and the four members of the cast that were in attendance were Tom Welling, Erica Durance, Kristen Crook, and John Glover. John Glover played Lionel Luthor, Kristen Crook was Lana Lang, Erica Durance was Lois Lane, and Tom Welling obviously was Clark Kent. Um, you know, the only bummer for me is I was just really hoping Michael Rosenbaum would be there. But there was definitely like this feeling of him being there in spirit. Like he talked about him a lot. And I know he's very active and he's with them. So um it was funny at one point they're like he doesn't have to be here. We're talking about him so much that he's probably, you know, he'll probably just laugh his ass off anyway. But it was really fun. It was really cool. I don't think I've seen Tom Welling be interviewed by Michael Rosenbaum on Rosenbaum's show. So I've heard them talk about it. I've watched a couple episodes of the Talkville podcast where they talk about Smallville. It was just Welling and Rosenbaum, and then some guests here and there. Um, but this was cool. Like it was really neat to see them kind of sit down and shoot the shit, and you kind of got the or got the feel of who these people really were. Tom Welling has a very dry sense of humor, but he's funny. Like he's funnier than I expected him to be. Um, on the show, he was always so serious. He didn't necessarily deliver the comedic lines. I think at one point later in the show, probably when you were there, when they were answering, you know, fan questions instead of the moderator questions, it kind of came up how everybody, he never had to act, right? He would just kind of be up there and he didn't have to do much because the world was everything happening around Clark Kent, not necessarily Clark Kent doing anything. So, for the most part, when he was playing Clark as Clark, there were episodes with red kryptonite and stuff like that. But when he was playing it straight, he was, kind of a boring dude. He just stood there and kind of let everything happen around him. And that was, were you there when John Glover told the story about when they in the episode where they switch bodies? And
I was there. Yes, I was
yeah,
there.
and John Glover talks about how hard it was to play Clark the way that Tom Welling does, because he's like, he's like, it's harder than it sounds, but he's like, I didn't know how to do nothing. He's like, that's what he struggled with so much. And he said that he felt like Tom Welling did such a good John Glover, but he really struggled with the like do nothing, because he's a trained actor. I think he's won a Tony, they said, like
Yes.
he's been around. So, but it's a lot of fun. Like it was really cool. And like I said, you got to see the personality. I really I feel a little more in love with Erica Durance. I've always been a big Lois fan from Smallville. I think she's the best, maybe the best like spunky Lois Lane, like the Lois Lane that we're used to seeing. I actually love Bitsy Tulloch in Superman and Lois, but it's a different take. Like it for her character, it's a grown up, mature mom. Like she's definitely different. And so if you look back at even the Superman with Christopher Reeve that we grew up with, she had an attitude. She was fiery and all that. And I think Erica Durance did an awesome job portraying that in the show. Like she had attitude for sure, but she was so sweet and so funny in person. Like she was hilarious. She made me laugh so much. Um, so yeah, I mean, what did you take away from that panel?
I think one of the two things I remember for sure was when Tom was saying how you weren't allowed to sweat on the show. So
Well,
like
he
whenever
wasn't
oh he
specifically
was
because
because yes,
yeah,
right.
because Clark wouldn't sweat.
So like, they do two takes, like where like, they do a wide shot where he's wearing, all his clothes, right? But all the close-ups, he'd be wearing like shorts, like
Yeah,
everything on top and the shorts. And I remember it even threw off some of the cast members. I think it was I think Kristen might have said something like, well, what the hell's going on? Like, why is he just wearing shorts? But that's what he would do because he wanted to stay, cool because
yeah,
he'd get hot. The other thing I wrote was really cool was when they talked about how Christopher Reeve really loves being on the set.
yeah.
And
I hadn't heard that before.
yes, and his assistant, it got to the point where she was like, "Look, I'm calling the cops because to get you off of this set because you cannot be on set for so long because he's only supposed to be on for like I think 4 hours and like he stayed for like
Yeah,
6 or 7 and it wasn't healthy, but he just really enjoyed his time on set so much. So I thought that was cool. I also loved when Kristen said that her favorite episode was Lexmas because that was one
yeah,
I really, really liked. And I remember not even seeing it when it first came out. I had to go see it like after the fact. But so I forgot that it all even happened. But it was almost like I think that episode even happened like before her and Lex actually ended up together, I think. I think.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, so it was a bit predictive, but it just seemed so elsewhere back in the day. But yeah, I love it when I guess when the talent when an actor actually is into something that resonated with you too. So I thought that was really kind of cool.
Yeah,
Um, and then his jokes about the whole, I guess one guy talked about CGI, like I got to get back into shape. Oh, we got CGI for that. Like, and
Yeah, yeah.
Tom, you could tell Tom was a little like, like, you don't think I can do that? Like, it was funny.
Because he's a big dude. Like I know, like I obviously, we were together all day. I didn't do the photo shoots or anything like that, or the photo ops. But like, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
I'm 230. Like I'm not small. He's about the same height as me, but you can tell by looking at him and looking at me, that he's a big guy. Like he's bigger than me, but he's fit and I am not. You know what I mean? Like he's like if you watch Lucifer and see him on that, that's if you haven't seen him in a while, that's probably the best. Although they said at the end of the show, and I haven't watched it yet, but they literally just on the CW premiered a show with him and Brendan Fraser called
Oh,
Professionals on the CW.
cool. Okay.
Um, and I don't know what it's about. It looks like it's probably a little goofy and fun. Um, but so he's on that, and then I just saw that they cast him as the dad on the new Winchester show, which is the prequel to Supernatural.
Yes.
So he's getting back into working.
Good
He
for
hadn't
him,
done a
man.
lot for a while. Like Lucifer was the first thing I really remember seeing him in post Smallville. Like I hadn't seen him do anything in a long time. Um, and it's interesting too. Like if you watch the Talkville or listen to the Talkville podcast, he'll say like when it comes to Smallville, like he's done the cons and stuff, but to really sit down and talk about it, he he's never really felt ready to like delve into it the way that he is now. And he said no, now he finally feels ready for that. So I think the 10 years on the show, especially when if you listen to the first episode of Talkville, he talks about how taxing it was, especially for him um and Rosenbaum, because they were doing that show for 10 months out of the year. For him, it was 10 years. Like he gave up his entire 20s to be Clark Kent, right? Like he started at 23 till 33. Um, and so, I mean, that's a lot to give up, you know? And he did it and he's never complained about it. He's never once said he regretted it or anything like that. But at the same time, he was like, yeah, I did that now. And I think I need a break. And now he's married. He's got one or two kids, and he got to live his life for a little bit. And I think now I think he's choosing his roles now. That's the other thing too. I don't know if it came up in the Q&A as much as it did in the beginning, but when he's given the opportunity to talk about it, he talks about how when he was starting on that show, he had never acted before. So when people would say, we need you on the set at 1 a.m. and then, he'd finished filming at 11 the night before, he would
Mm,
just say, okay, because he didn't know that wasn't how it was done. Like
wow.
in his mind, that's what you do. Um, and so he had to learn along the way that they don't necessarily own you. And that was the other takeaway too, is that I had always known about the no flights, no tights rule for him, but I thought that was mandated by the network. But it sounds like he very early on got that put into his own contract, and they talked about putting him in costume as early as the first season, and he was like, "Why don't you go back to my contract? We're not doing that." Like he stood up to them in the first season. I want to say he said it was like as early as like the fifth episode they were talking about getting him into the outfit, and he was like, "No." And like that was the hard and fast rule. Like they cheated it a little bit at points, right? Like if if you watch the show when he was the Blur, he had powers. There was an episode 4 or 5, I think, where I don't know if it's the red kryptonite or what it is, but he's not himself, but he's, obviously he's Tom Welling, and he does fly. Like he takes off and flies. And so he flies a few times um, early in the series, but not regularly. But he was very hard and fast. The only time that they ever showed him in the costume, and I think it was full CGI, was the last
Yes.
episode, like the
Correct.
last shot of the last episode. um, which was cool to me because like that was the official transition
Yep.
to
Superman.
Superman because he was never Superman before that. I know in later seasons, like they would flash forward to the future, and there were stories like in the Daily Planet about Superman, like he came up, but as far as Tom Welling went, he wasn't really Superman until to that last shot.
Now, did you say there was a story that John Glover? I know John Glover kept talking about being nude or something. Like, did he talk about? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a season where John Glover ends up in jail. And I don't know if they were just joking or how serious it was, but when they were filming, he was like pretty much nude because they were hosing him down,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
in the scene. And then he was talking about how the next movie that he's doing actually does have a nude scene, and he's not young, but he looks good for however old he
Yes.
is. Like
He's fit.
he's spry. He's spry. He was a lot of fun. But I knew that about him. Like I knew he was a fun guy, but it was fun to see him do that in person. Like I've seen him um, on social media in a few different places, and I know he's a fun guy, but it was really neat to see him get to be that guy. Um,
Cool.
so that one was fun. That one was really fun. Um, and when that panel was over, I think we went and grabbed lunch, right? We went and grabbed some food,
Yes, we did. But
hit
went to the,
the
the truck.
yeah, hit the taco truck. So the New York City Comic Con was really cool. They had a food court and there's all this stuff, but out in this funky kind of underground parking garage setup they had a line of food trucks. And me being the tubby 2x4 that I am, before you got there, before we went into the Smallville panel, I was hungry, and they had a cool like Japanese fusion taco place. So um, I got some tacos from there, and they were super different. One of them was a some kind of curried beef, and and legitimately for the rest of the day, every now and then I would just smell curry. Like even like I think it got on my hands or something because I think it was when I get my hands close to my face. But when we went, I think we all hit the taco truck. You got a bowl, I think my wife got a bowl, and I got 3 tacos. So I had like 6 tacos that day. That was great. But the food is good.
Yes.
I liked my tacos. And then we went and kind of camped out in the line for um,
Star
Star
Trek.
Trek, which was a trippy panel. Like it was cool. Like for me, I'm behind on Discovery. So the way the panel went it was Discovery, then it was Prodigy, and then it was
Or
next well Picard, yeah. But what made that panel cool, and this was legitimately the whole reason that my wife and I even bought tickets, because she's a huge Next Generation fan, was that it was actually the entire cast of Next Generation is going to be on the next season of Picard, so they were all there, including the very elusive Mr. Patrick Stewart. Um, and so, the Discovery panel at the beginning was actually cool. Like knowing that I'm behind, I was like, I don't know if I care. But I tell you what, in that panel, I fell in love with Sonequa Martin Green all
yeah.
over again.
Yes.
And I remembered how much I do like the cast of Discovery. Like I love Anthony Rapp. The dude, what's his name that plays his
Dr.
boyfriend on the
Culber.
show.
I know.
I
I'll
can
look it up.
picture him. I know
I
his
know.
name too.
Cruz,
Um,
Wilson Cruz. Wilson Cruz.
there you go, Wilson Cruz. I like him a lot. And so that was a fun one. It actually got me at least curious because so each one of these panels they showed a trailer for the show in question. So they showed a quick trailer for the next season of Discovery, which I have no idea what any of it means, right? Because I'm so far behind. Um, but I was like, maybe I need to go back and just watch Discovery, knowing I think I have the advantage of knowing that maybe it's not as good as we thought it was going to be when it dropped, or as good as the first season, because the first season was really good.
Yes.
And I know that it fell off, but maybe knowing that it falls off, I won't be as irritated when it does, and it'll be a little more entertaining for me. That's kind of my hope.
Here's what I'll say. I actually think the second season. Well, first of all, watch the first. Like you've seen the first season. there are shorts that actually take place before the second season. They're actually pretty essential because one of the shorts introduces Pike. And then there's also shorts that are like that connect to the second season. The shorts are some of my favorite stuff. Second season, I think, is actually
Okay.
superior, I think, to the first season. But it's
I've heard that too.
yeah, it's largely because it's really it's Pike's show. And it's like, but he's the captain of the Discovery, basically. But it's so good. Third season is where it starts to get a little weird. Fourth season is where I dropped off completely. And then the fifth season, like, which is coming up, is gonna make me go back and stomach the fourth season the same way that, I think in Agents of Shield, I feel like season three kind of like fell off, and then I basically just I stopped. And then season four, I kept hearing it was good, and season five was gonna be the last season. So now I'm like, okay, season five is gonna be the last season. Let me go ahead and go back and finish this, because Agents of Shield is like 20 something episodes a damn season. So
Yeah.
I was invested. I need to know how this finishes, and it actually worked. So I think you'll be fine, and I'll be really excited to hear what you think of Pike. Because if you like Strange New Worlds, anyone out there, you need to watch season two. I think that it'll make you like the show even more because it just gives you more background into Spock and Pike.
Yeah, that's right. I remember Spock being a big deal in that particular
Yes.
season. So that one was cool. But yeah, I think I have always liked Sonequa Martin Green. I was at least for a long time, I was a pretty big Walking Dead fan. I liked it for a long time. And one thing that really kept me in that show as long as it did was the after show that what's his name did, called The Talking Dead, with Chris
Hardwick.
yeah, Chris Hardwick. And so she was on there a few times. She had personality, she was cool. Like, so I've always liked her. Um, but seeing her on the big screen, because she couldn't be there for the panel because she was shooting that night before, and so she couldn't make it. And so they dialed her in live. And man, she was like a ray of like
Her
sunshine. Like she
energy is
was,
amazing, and I'm actually
yeah,
getting goosebumps just remembering how she was. I mean,
yeah.
she's a believer in the spirit of the show. She's a believer in
Hmm.
the fans. You can tell that she feels very blessed and grateful to be in a
Yeah,
position
yeah.
to kind of be part of this movement. She even brought up Michelle Nichols. You can feel the love between her and Wilson and Anthony and
Yeah.
writers. Like, they are a really positive um group, and
Yeah, and I think
um
that's what interested me the most in going back, is knowing that there's that real chemistry behind the scenes, and that positive. Like I said, she was pretty cool. Like I really did kind of fall in love with her in that moment. Like she was uh, just so happy, and so like she loves what she's doing right now, and that's a big deal. And so yeah, so that was a lot of fun. Prodigy was interesting. Part of me actually kind of wants to go watch the Prodigy show. I don't. It's a different take, and it was interesting to see Kate Mulgrew talk about it. Because she said, it's kind of the point of the show is that it's made for kids, right? It runs on Nickelodeon, it's animated. But if you get kids to watch that show, they're going to say to their parents, "Well, who is Janeway?" And then you'll be like, "Well, Janeway was on Voyager. Well, who's on Voyager?" And you start this like generational conversation about Star Trek. And I was like, that is pretty cool. And so, part of me kind of wants to watch it just to see what it's all about. Like there were some moments in there, and with the when the cast was talking about it, I was like, I could see some fun storylines in there. If I accept it as a kid's show, it's not going to be as super deep as Discovery or Strange New Worlds or something like that. But that doesn't mean it would necessarily be bad. That one was fun because the panel was so weird.
yes.
Like Jamila's on the show, and she came out she came out at 10, man. Um she actually, I think you said it, I think she seemed like she maybe partied a little too hard the night before.
Yeah,
She had
man.
like dark sunglasses on the whole time, and
Big sunglasses. And I felt like, even like what she, like, some of her, she was saying some stuff, I just felt like it was just kind of like the rest of the panel was kind of like, we don't know about that. I think she
Yeah,
tried something, and they were all like,
she
"Oh, I
did.
picked us now." Like
Yeah,
yeah, man, something was up. I
she
mean,
was fun, but she was definitely she did seem like maybe she had a good time the night before.
yeah,
Um, and good for her. um, but that one's interesting. Not having a stake in that show. The trailer actually, like I said, was a little interesting. Like you could definitely tell there was a story there that they definitely worked on. It wasn't just a throwaway show. The cast was decent. I like that they have. Um, I like that Janeway is there, and there's two variations of Janeway. So you've got Admiral Janeway post Voyager, and then there's a young Janeway on the show, which is a hologram of Janeway. Um, and admittedly, I don't know Voyager that well. I watched most of the first season, um, but for some reason that show fell off to me, and I found out much later that the cast did not like each other. So the cast of Voyager did not get along, and I think that intentionally or not, just you could feel that when you watch the show. There just wasn't a love there that you had on Next Generation that it seems like you have on Discovery and on all these other shows. So, but then next up was our big panel with the Next Generation crew, and I have to say, one of my favorite things ever. And I told Andrew this story. First time I ever went to a Star Trek convention was with my wife. She was the bigger Star Trek fan, so we went. We were late. We walked in the door, and on stage when she and I got there, um, Michael Dorn and Marina Sirtis were on stage, and they were, talking, doing their shtick. Uh, and if you've only ever watched Star Trek, you have the impression that Marina Sirtis is this like sweet, kind, like cuddly teddy bear of a woman. And she's insane. She's batshit crazy in the absolute best way. And the second I walked in, because one of the things that my wife loves the most about Star Trek: The Next Generation is the relationship between Riker and Troy. Like she's got books about it, like there's storylines, the Imzadi books storyline, like all this stuff about them, and that's her favorite thing. So like Troy has always been Troy, and so when we walked in, and she like literally on stage put her leg up on Michael Dorn's shoulder, my wife's like face just dropped. Like she was devastated at what was happening on stage, and I was like, oh, I was like, I officially am in love with that woman now. And so knowing that, and I think I told you the story beforehand, um,
yes,
but it's getting to see her
yeah,
for the first time. It was like living it all over again because she's just not what you think, man. She is all of the personality. Like
all of the personality.
everybody else feels like their characters. Like Michael Dorn is like super stoic and like cool. He's fun. Like they're all funny, like every single one of them.
Yeah,
But he's chill. Brent Spiner's a little goofy, a little dorky. Patrick Stewart's like the dirty old man, like he's 150 years old and whatever. Um, you know, Riker, Jonathan Frakes, is he's very Riker-esque, uh, Gates McFadden is Beverly, they're all so similar, and she is just Marina Sirtis is nuts. Um, but that one was fun. So they did the kind of the same thing they did with Smallville, where it was a moderated panel, and then it was questions. And of course, we got the trailer for season 3 of
which
Picard,
looks
which
sick.
oh, oh the one thing that they said, I think it was maybe it was the writer actually compared season 3 of Picard to Crimson Tide.
Yes, which I have to.
Um,
I now have to go see it. By the way, I know I'm
yeah, I haven't watched it.
slowly. Okay, I feel better. Yeah, I've never
Yeah,
seen it.
yeah. I know it's Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington,
Yep.
if that helps. I know they were submarine captains, and one of them is the mutinous, which is a very interesting. Just to know that makes
Yes,
some
intriguing.
pretty huge implications for the next season of Picard. But so I have seen many panels with these guys, and I've even seen them together once before, like the entire crew. I think I told you I went to a con in LA and everybody was there, and we spent the money and sat front row. So that was incredible. But being that it was your first panel with all them, what'd you think? Like, what was your
And
takeaway from them?
okay. First of all, I just felt lucky to be in the same room, breathing the same air. This is legitimately like that was history. What I just saw. I even had a conversation with someone about how everyday life doesn't can be fantastic or awful, and they're like, no, everyday life is not fantastic and awful. It's just normal. Like, no, 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 no. I said no, everyday life can be, and I feel like the Comic-Con day was fantastic. I loved seeing LeVar Burton up there as well. Just talking about, first of all, the thing that made that cast so amazing is they all, I think, are very psychologically in touch and available to the audience. They're not
Hmm.
all snobby or whatever, not disconnected at all. So there was a moment where Jordy's talking about, I call him Jordy, LeVar Jordy, talking about like how his character finally has a family, which is really great.
Right.
In the show, he's always had dysfunctional relationships or whatever. He shouts out his daughter, his real daughter's what the hell? His real his real daughter is like playing his daughter in the show. I'm building up to it. That Patrick Stewart is such a loving person. He actually just shouts out someone in the audience. Like, we don't know who the hell this person is, but he's
Yeah,
like,
somebody's like 13th
birthday.
birthday or something like that. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, but whatever. He doesn't care. He loves her.
Yeah.
So awesome, right? But then that moment, oh my God. So this woman gets up on the microphone and she has a question. But before she asked the question, I even forget what she asked, frankly.
I don't even remember what it
But
was
like,
either.
but she basically just bursts into tears because she's remembering how much the show meant to her because she used to watch it with, I think, her uncle who's passed on. But she was just saying, I'm so happy and I'm so emotional. And she's crying. And Marina Sirtis gets up from the stage, man, and like I'm getting teary eyed just remembering it. Like she gets up from the stage and she walks into the crowd and like hugs her, man. Like holy crap! Like you didn't have to do that, man. Like you didn't have to do that, and she did it, and you can tell it was just so like no security, whatever. She's just so that's what made like her as a human, like she is empathic, right? But not empathic in the kind of like, you know, detached, kind of soft, like way. No, she's like, I mean, she said something like, we had signed so many NDAs. This is what it must feel like to be one of Trump's mistresses. Like
That's true.
she gives no F's, man. Like she is like one of the realest actors I've ever seen ever. The fact that she makes cracks like that and would run out in the crowd and hug somebody, that was amazing. And she has made that's why I'm crying. She has made that person's life. Like she'll never forget
Hmm.
it for the rest of her life, man.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. So um it was great. It was really great. And it's like they know each other so well. And I love the fact that they also kept on kind of saying little things like, there's some people not only from like CBS TV, but there's also some Paramount people here. You see the energy in the crowd, like we can do another movie. Like
Yeah.
they're planting all these seeds. Like there's no, like, you can tell there's not really any egos. Like, yes, we know it's Picard, but they would say like it'd be great, but we got our own show. Like, but it was like it was playful. It was never like bitter. Like, and that's the thing, right? Because
Yeah.
even like the original Star Trek, we know that there was beef between like Shatner and Takai and Doohan. Okay. Um, Obviously we know with Voyager that Seven of Nine and Janeway were not friends, okay, and it caused some stuff among the cast. But with Next Gen, they go to each other's weddings. I've actually
Hmm.
even seen a picture of like I think it's Jordy, Data, and then I think Archer. Like they're all just chilling. No, I think it's Dorn. It's Dorn,
Yeah.
Data,
Yeah.
Archer in a kitchen, and it's like it's so fucking cool, man. So it
Yeah.
was great, and I even said to you even that day, I said, Kevin, thank you, like thank you for letting me know that you were going to Comic Con because this just gave me life. And I even talked about my Attack on Titan shirt, but that's for later. But Yeah, man, that panel was great, and I feel bad for everyone who wasn't there who loved Star Trek because moments like this are fleeting now. They're not getting any younger. Hashtag just saying. So it was great.
And I will say that obviously being there was the most special, but I think you can actually find this panel on YouTube.
Okay, even
I
better.
think it does exist. So if you look up New York City Comic Con Star Trek panel, you can watch the whole thing.
Very good.
Like I said, being there was cooler, And as a matter of fact, I think the panel that is on YouTube doesn't show the trailer.
They
Although
probably
you can
can't.
find the
They
trailer now,
can't.
anyways,
Oh,
it doesn't
cool.
really matter.
Cool.
Um, but but it was cool. Like if you're at all interested and you want to see what you don't know about these people if you've never watched them before, it's definitely worth a watch because it's a lot of fun and they love each other. Like there's no question about it. Um, and it's really cool. Um, so after that one, we kind of hoofed it over to the Back to the Future panel. I wasn't even sure like earlier in the day if I was going to go to it or if I was going to try and head home after the Star Trek one because that was over at like 5:30, I think. And I was about 2 hours away. I live about 2 hours away. But we said the hell with it. We're just going to do it. The line was crazy long. I did not think we were going to get in, because there's standby for that, and we ended up getting in. It had, I guess, it seems like it had just started,
Oh yeah.
but they may have been a little behind, anyways, because it sounded like we were getting the first real question
Yeah.
when we walked in. And I don't know how you felt, but I was scared for a minute because I haven't seen
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox in a long time. And when he was talking, I was really struggling to understand him as we were walking into our seat, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pick up what he was saying. And that changed really fast. I don't know if it cleared up for him or if it just my brain kind of tuned into it or whatever. Um, but I've got to say, like that was a hell of a way to end the day.
Yes.
Because I know Michael J. Fox. He wrote a book that I've always intended to buy, and I haven't gone out and done it. I need to buy it and read it. I think he's done a couple now. But if somehow you don't know, Michael J. Fox has Parkinson's. It's super bad. He's had it for a very long time. He's had it since Spin City, and he it's rough. It's been hard on him and hard on his family, but I don't know that there's anybody more positive than that guy.
No.
Like I did not know this, and hearing him talk and hearing him up there, number one, he fucking loves Christopher Lloyd.
Yes.
Like family loves Christopher Lloyd. Um, and just like shit does not get him down. Like I'm sure like sometimes shit gets him down, like this life, but I mean he was a pretty positive guy and he was a lot of fun to just listen to and see them get the questions because they didn't take live questions for that one. Like they did the other two panels, I think the moderator was accepting questions on social media, and then he was the one asking them. Um, but man, it was really cool. It was really really cool to see these guys up there. Um, and they were like, Michael J. Fox is funny.
Yes.
Like he was
Yes.
struggling, like
Very, very quick wit.
when the gum fell out of his mouth and landed on the couch, and he just picks it up off the couch and puts it back in his mouth. And he's like, "I just got COVID. You guys saw it here. If I get COVID, you were here." And like he was hilarious, and I was just like, It's impressive to see that something that is debilitating
Yeah.
not to really take anything away from this guy. Like it
Yeah.
was really cool.
Yeah, after I left the panel, actually one of the first things I did was I actually read up on Parkinson's because I mean I know what
Mhm.
it is, but I don't really know what it is. And even just his history, apparently he was diagnosed in 91. So he knew as early as 91. So that's why he did movies like Greedy and a couple other things. And like, I think the Frighteners was one of the last ones he did in 96. But
Mhm.
they were basically saying you got a good maybe 6 to 8 years left of your career, so you just get it in now. And he did say that in the beginning, he did kind of do a little, like, he got into alcohol. He was really down on himself. But then after that little period, then, okay, I've got to just, you know, and he talked about, I think he was like with his family, I think in a pool or a whirlpool or something, and then that was like when he knew everything was going to be okay. I think it was his wife. um I'm just trying to remember everything that he talked about. I mean, he was a very, oh man, even learning about how, I think it was Brandon Tartikoff at NBC was like not for him. This is the, yeah, that's right. That's what it was. Which makes so much sense. So apparently Matthew Broderick was the original Alex PP, and that's who they wanted. And he turned it down, and then he was going to get the role, but he didn't want him. But then of course he got the role, and the guy said, "This is not the face that you'll see on a lunchbox, and ever." And of course it happened, and they actually sent it to him, and the guy totally kept it in
Yeah.
office for years. But I think what I really loved learning and about Michael and his drive was the fact that he would actually tape Family Ties in the day, and then at like after Family Ties, go shoot Back to the Future for like 3 months, like from like 1 in the morning to whatever to like 4 or 5, and then go right back to fucking Family Ties. And his mom
Yeah.
said, "Don't do it; it's gonna kill you,"
Don't
or
you?
whatever. And
Yeah.
and he said even to this day, unfortunately, she passed away recently, but to almost to this day, she still feels like he should have done it. But like,
Yeah.
what a great story. And just, I felt, and as you saw on social media, that was everywhere. So for me, the fact that we were also there to see history,
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
them hug, and to see them be on stage together, um was a blessing. So I now, and I also have never, throw tomatoes at me, I never saw Back to the Future Part 3. I've heard it wasn't as good as the others, but now I have to go see all of them again, because it's legendary. And I remember seeing Back
Yeah.
to the Future in '85, and now I'm in the room with a guy I grew up with, and he still sounds, I mean, his voice is still the same voice.
Yeah.
He's still witty up there, but it's just a very debilitating disease. But
Yeah. It just takes more effort. Everything is a little more effort. It's funny that you talked about Family Ties and Back to the Future, because it was a confluence of events that got him the role. Because
yes,
it's well documented at this point that
Eric Stoltz.
what's Stoltz had the role first, and it wasn't really working out. Um, but the real reason that Michael J. Fox got it after that is that they told him on Family Ties, they were like, no, you can't. It's like, we can't give you up, we can't give you the time. You're contracted to Family Ties. But I guess right at that time, Meredith Baxter Birney got pregnant. And so they were like, well, now we have to slow down production of the show. And that's how the door opened for him from the
Yeah,
Family Ties side to go and accept it. Um, and so it was like the stars aligned for this
yeah,
this this thing to happen. And when you see the guy talk, when you hear him talk about, all the things they've done together, and all the things that he's done in his life, all the money they've raised for Parkins, all the stuff, you know, whether you believe in coincidence or fate or whatever, like the stars aligned for this dude to make it, to get Parkinson's, to do, to do all these things for other people.
yeah.
And he's a really, really impressive guy. Like, um, so that was super cool. But thinking about that, I started watching Back to the Future tonight with my kids because they've never seen it.
Wow.
And what was really funny to me, and I put it in our group chat, um, but listening to Michael J. Fox talk for the first time as, young Michael J. Fox, and not having heard him in a long time, I haven't watched Back to the Future in a long time. Dude, I feel like Tom Holland must have watched Michael J. Fox to get his American accent and his voice, because they sound so similar, like the way they speak, not just, you know the accent, but the way they speak. He's got a little bit of an accent to him. Michael J. Fox does. Um, but I was like, dude, this is very Tom Holland. Like, If they were to reboot Back to the Future, they totally could have put Tom Holland in there.
You know, it's funny
Um,
actually. You've probably seen those memes where it's like if Marvel was made in the 80s. I'm pretty sure they put
yes,
Michael J. Fox as Peter Parker when they do it.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was fun. It was a cool panel, and I'm glad we stayed for it, and I'm glad we saw it because it was cool, you know. And other than the panels, we spent, what do we spend, like an hour on the floor, on the main
Yeah,
floor?
not much time. And as a matter of fact, when you guys took off, I was taking off too. And then I was kind of like, you should just, Andrew, stay and like walk around and like soak it up. But I was like, nah, you're tired. You want to talk about it. Just go to
Yeah.
Taco Bell. And I did, by the way. And
Uh,
this is a good segue now. Even in Taco Bell, dude, someone was like, dude, that is a badass shirt. I'm like, thank you. So I had this green like Attack on Titan button-up shirt, which you can't get anywhere. And it's got like the wings of freedom here, 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 and on the back. And I just felt so much pride wearing my Sasageo Attack on Titan shirt, and it got love. And that was a huge part of my enjoyment of the con as well. Um, so basically, my computer's trying to reboot, and I don't know why. So I'm just like handling that. I don't know if you could hear that. Anyway, but yeah, man. So it was just such a good day, and but yeah, I maybe we'll go next year again and like actually like soak up more of the floor. But I think that between all the seeing 3 panels and heavyweight panels at that, what more could you ask for?
exactly. Yeah, it was cool, and it's interesting to see the stuff that they had panels on the day before. I can't remember offhand, but there were some really cool ones the day before too. Like if I had bought like the 4-day pass or something, it might have actually been worth it. Because there was cool stuff going on. So I would tell you, if you're near a major city where they have a con,
No.
they're worth checking out. They're worth checking out and see what's going on, especially if it's the right season for your shows. The one thing I'll say about the Star Trek panel, it was interesting to see it in the context that it was, because they were all a little beholden to the shows that they're on, right? So they couldn't talk as freely about everything. Like, they were there for a purpose, right? So they were talking about Picard specifically. When I have seen them all in the past, it's usually because they're just at a con, like they're just doing their thing, and weren't necessarily promoting anything. And you get a different feel. Like, they definitely are more rambunctious when they're not quite so tethered to a project. That's not a bad thing. Like, they were great. They were entertaining. Um, but it was funny to hear them continually reference their NDAs and what they can and can't say right now,
Yes.
because they are shit to servers. Like, they're like, oh, I can't tell you that. I've signed an NDA, but they didn't just say it in like, the PC way of, oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that. I said, like, they were mocking the NDA process pretty openly. Um, and but like, even Marina was like held back a little bit, because I think in the second time I saw her, when she talks about Deep Space Nine, she calls it Deep Sleep Nine, just
Ah.
openly. She's like, our show's better. Like, she'll just flat out say it. Like,
And she wouldn't even, yeah, she's like, she
nah,
knew.
she does not hold back. So you definitely, like, it was 100% cool to see them all together, see them promote their show or whatever. But if you can ever see any of them somewhere where they're not promoting something, you'll get a little bit of a different feel, because they are a little more free to be themselves, and that's a lot of fun.
One thing I also wanted to just sneak in there really quick is I going back to Discovery. I loved hearing how Anthony was more like, I think Anthony, when he found out he was being cast, he was a bit more like blasé about it, I think. Whereas Wilson was like, oh my God, I need to get on this damn show. And I love that how both Anthony and Wilson are connected to Rent. I think Wilson was in the LA
Hmm.
cast. I
Hmm.
saw him out there. And of course, Anthony is part of the first cast. But what I really loved was how um, Wilson apparently wore that drip, like the white coat, which is a dope coat, by the way. But he was
Yeah.
like a little sad, and she's like, Sonequa's got to see this coat, like, and Sonequa's like, oh, I see your coat, like it's
Yeah.
raining, like it's just funny how like they they really have a contemporary modern, like they're very of the moment, like they're very they're almost like younger millennial Gen Z kind of mentality, but they're older obviously, but they're plugged in, and I loved that, but I just had to like bring that up, because but yeah, Wilson, like that was a fly ass fucking
Dude, that was a dope look. That was
with
that was cool.
I think he had the turtleneck thing going on too.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So yeah, that was a cool day. That was a lot of fun. Um, and nobody was there or part of it, so we talked forever about it, and now you guys all know about it, and that's that.
that was a long one.
It was longer than I thought it'd be, but you know what? It was worth it. Like I said, we had a lot of fun. I hope anybody listening can at least tell we had a lot of fun. Um, and again, the other cool thing about it is it is the first time that you and I have met in person. So that was really cool.
East Coast team, baby.
Yep, we're so much cooler than those West Coast losers. Bums. So into more topical stuff. It is October, and we had kind of somehow assigned ourselves the task of watching Sinister. I think because 3 or 4 weeks ago, you had posted an article that said, based on science, Sinister was the scariest movie ever made. And I was like, well, shit, I gotta see what that's all about. And so we talked about it, and I watched it, and you just watched it this last week, I think, right? Or the week before.
Literally like Friday night before the con.
Okay. Yeah. So we were going to talk about it last week, but we didn't record. So here we are. By the time this drops, it'll be a week before Halloweenish. What did you think of Sinister?
Honestly, I thought it was solid. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
say it was mind blowing. I'm not gonna say it was bad, but I will say it was solid. I mean, that's I remember, though, I will say this. I remember being a little cautious. Like I actually I remember I think I finished it Saturday morning actually, because I was like, when I first started the movie, I was like a little nervous to start it at night because I don't want to get too spooked out. The whole Bagul, Mr. Boogie thing was like seeing his weird ass face. Like, I don't know. But ultimately, it just felt just, yeah, it wasn't really that groundbreaking for me. There's people in my feed who are like, oh my God, it stuck with me forever. Like, they really love.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you said, like, horror is very subjective, like comedy. So what scares one person might not scare the other person. Like for me, bringing Satan and devils and shit, yeah, I'm fucking terrified. Like, there's actually shit I will not expose myself to because of that. But this one, if it's just like regular people, and yes, this dude is supernatural. Actually, he's like
Yeah.
some old Sumerian shit or whatever the fuck, like, and that does kind of creep me the fuck out. But so maybe if I read up more into it, I'll get scareder. But it was also predictable. So I think because it's
Yeah.
predictable, because you're doing shit I would never do, like, that's the other thing. Like, if you're doing it to yourself, I'm not as scared, because that means, okay, Andrew, note to self, if you're in that, because if you're in a situation, don't do that shit. But
Yeah.
when you're
Don't
just
start fucking watching videos that are up in your, or
right,
don't move into a murder house. Number one. How about
don't
that?
move into a murder house, dude,
Yeah.
and bring your family with. Like, what are you
Yeah. Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
man?
And not tell them. And not tell them. Like that was it. I was like, dude, you're kind of a dick. You're kind of a dick.
Kind of a dick.
Like,
You're a full-on dick, dude. You're an egotistical dick. Anyways, yeah, so that's my first salvo. How about yourself? Like, what do you think?
I was the same. Like for me, it really was predictable because the thing that freaked me out before I watched it, and I told you this, is that the trailer, like, it's like creepy kids. Is like they really focused on the kids being creepy, and I was like, that shit kind of does give me the willies. Like I don't know what it is. Like maybe it's because generally speaking, kids are innocent, or whatever. But I mean, even when they're little dicks, they're innocent. But like in the trailer that I saw, I was like, these kids are not okay. Like there's some weird shit. Um, but what's weird about it is I thought everybody gave a really solid performance. Like I thought it was a well-made movie. I do think like the last shot with the kids going into the picture or going into the TV or the video or whatever, I thought that was a little corny. Um, but yeah, it was predictable. It didn't. I actually don't think at any point watching it that I was genuinely scared, and I definitely thought I was going to be. Um, and so watching it, I was like, I don't know where uh, where people in the study got their heart rate up. Um, there was things that I expect. Like I expected the cop that was helping him out
Hmm.
kind of to be a bad guy. Like I was waiting for him to like be a bad guy. Um, so that was, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that he wasn't because that seemed like it was an easy, low hanging fruit there. Um, but it was just okay. Like it really wasn't. Um, didn't terrify me. Like I've seen scarier stuff. I think there's moments of Haunting of Hill House or Midnight Mass that were scarier. Like
Oh yeah.
and that has, I mean, those shows have a deeper sense of dread too. Like those kind of get into you a little more because they're, I think, a longer form helps those. Um, but yeah, you're right though. Like you're watching it, and you're like, I wouldn't do that. So now I'm just watching a guy be an idiot. Like it, it just didn't. And and at some point, like he was trapped in it. Like it was going to go the way it went, right?
Yo, I did kind of like that twist. I did like that. Like he did the right thing, but by doing the right thing, he did the wrong thing. You just
yeah.
basically sealed your shit. And he knew it, and it was a wrap. Um, I was gonna say that, like, for me, like when he's in the dark and you actually see like the kids, like the dead kids or whatever, like running around and shit, like behind them and like little jump scare type shit, like that was kind of freaky because I live in an old building. I'm just saying, like, apparently is haunted.
Well,
So
and that
yeah.
shit trips me out too because, like, for example, my wife went to a little like a consignment store in the town over, and there was a lady selling a book that she wrote, and she was autographing it about the town over. It's called Collinsville. It's a little town, cute little town actually. It's super nice. But apparently it's a relatively haunted town. And so she had a book she wrote about all the hauntings that she's researched and heard about in the town. And like that's the thing about New England, right? Is that like
Yeah.
this is a haunted fucking corner of the United States. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of shit. And so like that haunting stuff gets me a little bit more now that I live over here.
Fair.
Um, but yeah, there were things about the story that were cool. Like the way that this malevolent thing kind of passed from family to family was interesting. Like how it got where it got. Um, but I every time the face of
So
like the
cool.
bad guy showed up, I
Hmm.
was like, I was like, eh,
Really?
eh. He
Okay.
didn't scare me. But
Interesting.
I don't know. Like I said, I've read Stephen King since I was like 11. Like I'll talk about Midnight Club in a little bit, but
Yeah.
like there were, I liken Midnight Club's written by Christopher Pike, and I feel like when you're talking about like the big horror writers of like our generation, you had R.L. Stein for the young kids, and then you would move over to Christopher Pike, which was kind of in the middle. That was a little more older teen horror, and then you had Stephen King, which was for adults. But for me, I skipped R.L. Stein and Christopher Pike and went straight to Christine. Was the first Stephen King book I read at, like I said, like 11 or 12. Like I was pretty young, but I loved it. I ate it up, and I've read everything dude has written. So um, I I've been in the horror genre for a long time, so stuff doesn't doesn't scare me as easily. Although when a movie is scary, it actually scares me more than a scary book. Like I think it must be something about the visual medium. Like if it gets to me, it can scare the shit out of me. I think we've talked about it before, but when Blair Witch came out and the way that it was hyped, it felt real. So like the things that were scary about that movie and the fact that I lived in the woods at the time, like I lived up on top of a mountain. Um,
Hell
like getting out of my car that night,
no.
I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get inside, you know? And so that stuff, it can get me more than a scary book in a lot of cases. Um, but and now I'm older and more cynical, so I think I'm harder to scare a little bit, maybe. Um, but I did like it. I did not think it was a bad movie at
Yeah.
all. It just wasn't as terrifying as everybody made it out to
Just
be.
the study. I'm reading it now. It's even in the Wikipedia article. The rest of the like the ratings, like 63% of Rotten Tomatoes. It's like a 53 out of 100 on Metacritic. So a lot of people are, it's average, above average. It's nothing groundbreaking. But props to Scott Derrickson. Got to throw that out there because
Yeah,
of course you went ahead and did Doctor Strange after that, and then we went ahead and did Black Phone. So I think
yeah.
overall
Which Black Phone was great. I did think there. I know I had a couple of minor issues with that one, but I liked Black Phone overall. Like I thought it was good and creepy. I'd almost prefer a movie to be creepy and eerie and kind of get inside your bones a little bit than be scary. Because scary is usually you're getting cheap scares, you're getting cheap thrills, and they don't always land. So um, yeah, I take something that really creeps me out over something that is trying to actively scare me. Um, which I guess brings us to our next film that we both watched for October. Is scary. I was excited for it because growing up, I did not watch the original Hellraiser films. I have not seen old school Hellraiser. I've always meant to, never have. Um, I think that I skipped horror movies as a kid because I was so into books. So like I've never seen Phantasm, I've never seen
Oh wow.
Hellraiser. Yeah, so there's definitely like a classic horror corner of my life that's missing that I need to get into. Um, but the new Hellraiser, like I remember seeing them talk about producing it. I thought I read that Clive Barker was more involved in this
He
one,
is, unfortunately.
and yeah, man, this it wasn't very good. At first I thought it was a series. Like I thought they were making a Hellraiser series, and I thought that was going to be kind of cool. Um, but man, this was really just all about moments of gore and then a slow moving storyline that wasn't very well explained.
Or characters that you don't aren't likable at all.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it was weird. It was like an old Showtime movie almost, where they cast a bunch of nobodies that aren't particularly great actors. They put their money into their special effects. The special effects were fine for the most part. Um, when and oh, so the guy Goran Vishnik, I think is his name. Goran, is that his name? Goran Vishnik that played the dude that had the thing in his chest at one point, like the guy
Yes.
that started
Yeah.
it all.
Correct. Yep.
I like him as an actor. He was on a show called Timeless, which I fucking loved. That was canceled too soon. Um, but like, and his like transformation at the end, that was pretty grisly. Like that was cool, but there was never a moment in that movie at all where I was like, this is scary. It just was was gore. Like
Yeah.
they didn't explain the puzzle box until almost the end. And even then the explanation was a little wonky until, the very end when they're picking it. Um, and yeah, and yeah, like kind of like you said, I didn't care about anybody.
Nope.
Like none of the characters like drew you in or made you give a damn about what was going to happen to him. So I don't know. I don't know. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I have watched the first two Hellraisers, and basically, like I watched the second one recently, like I want to say like maybe last summer. And because I remember like as a kid, as a 12-year-old, putting in the videotape at like 1 in the morning after my brother's eighth grade party, whatever, seventh grade party, and I noped the fuck out legitimately, like I think 4 minutes in because a skinless dude is sitting in a corner writing "help me" on the wall, but he's fucking skinless, and I'm just like, nope, 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 nope,
Yeah, no, thank
nope,
you.
nightmare fuel, no. Um, so I watched the movie and it's gory as fuck. But it's also, it's dark, and I feel like there's something about like 80s films. There was a darkness that I feel like, and it could be just because it takes me back to being a kid. Maybe I'm more vulnerable to darkness, but at the same time, I feel like no, I think the 70s and 80s, they were dark, man. There's something about them. And the first one is more about, I think it's like a woman who wants to bring back her man, and she has to keep killing people to bring him back, and like, and she kills him in the attic, and then like the blood goes on the floor, and then he comes back alive or whatever. And they kind of alluded to that in this film, but it never really happens. They try to get the sister to do it for her brother, and she
That's right.
doesn't.
That's right. She's trying to bring her brother back
It's
from.
like what is this? This should not be called Hellraiser. It should be called, I don't know what it's called, but that ain't fucking
Throw the
Hellraiser.
box in the Hudson and walk away. That's what it should have been
Yes,
like.
dude. And then like the boyfriend. Okay, that's like so cliche. The last Scream movie, it's always the boyfriend, So it's like,
Yeah.
you really like. So yeah, man. I was disappointed. I was disappointed, man. Like this is nope, nope. I go back. The only good from this film, in my opinion, is it makes you want to go back and watch Hellraiser 1 and 2. The rest of them, like all these other horror movies, the rights aren't owned by the creators. They just go ahead and try to milk it for what it's worth, and they get worse and worse and worse. But the first two are classics. So yeah, I we can keep this shit short, man.
It just sucked.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sucked. It was
Which.
so bad. I was happy it was over. It took me like
Yeah.
probably 8 or 9 sittings. Like I literally had turned it
Oh,
off.
really?
Else. It was
I
that's
definitely
how I,
watched it all in a row, but
good for you.
I was just like, the whole time I was like, well, why? Like, why throw the fucking box in the river? Like, you're not getting anywhere. At some point, they completely lost the plot on bringing her brother back, anyways. Like,
Yes.
they weren't even talking about it anymore. It was just moving on to the next puzzle.
And even that
And
lawyer or whatever, like the woman who was in the hospital, her plot, it didn't add anything to the story at all.
yeah, yeah, it was
It was
bad,
dumb.
which is disappointing because I think I've only read two Clive Barker books, but he's a good writer. Like his stuff is solid. Um,
Well, I blame David
and
Boyer. Sorry, David, if you're listening. I mean, I know you've done some good things, but I think honestly, after I don't know what you've done after BVS, and even that's controversial because I'm defending BVS for the Ultimate Edition, whereas everyone else isn't. I've taken tomatoes for your ass. So just saying, dude, like
yeah.
you're there's a guy who worked, I'm taking up too much time, but there's a guy who worked at Fox. He wrote The Last Stand. Get his name.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps getting more movies. I don't know why. He also did Dark Phoenix too, and he directed it, and he's horrible. You know what I'm talking
I
about?
can't remember the name. I know who you're talking about, and I can't remember the name.
But
Um,
anyway, you're like, you and him are like in the same boat. You guys keep getting work. I don't know why, but you did Dark City. So again, I'm giving you props. You did Dark
Dark
City.
City is fucking
Dark City is
fantastic.
legit, dude. So David Goyer, you're the man for that. But yeah, dude, you didn't deliver here.
Yeah. So, and then the last thing that I have for a little October Halloween segment is the show behind me. Did you start it at all? Have you had watched any of it?
Which one?
Midnight Club.
No, but just take it away, dude.
Okay,
Seriously, spoil me too much.
so I won't spoil too much about it. It is by Christopher Pike. So, like I said, it's kind of in that older teen YA writing section, and so what the story is this young girl. She is behind my head. right in the middle. That girl
Okay.
in her nose. She is sort of the main character. She's sort of driving it. Starts off with her at a party. She's 18 or 20. She goes to somewhere in there. She's too young to drink. I think she goes to the party. Meets a boy. Like she's having a nice time. She's the salutatorian. She wasn't the valedictorian for her school, but salutatorian. So she's crazy smart. She's at the party. She coughs up blood and passes out. Um, and what we find out is she's got carcinoma. She's got lung cancer. And so, they go through some rounds of treatment and they're not getting anywhere. And so she's researching something and she finds a story about a girl that had what she has, recovered, and so she's reading about the girl, and the girl spent some time in this teen hospice, and she looks it up and decides that she wants to go live there and see if she can do more research about this girl that mysteriously got better. um, and so the story takes place in this hospice, so all these kids are all terminal. um, and so she joins the hospice and meets all these kids, and she sees them sneaking out one night at midnight, and she falls into the library, and what she finds out is their coping mechanism is to tell scary stories to each other at midnight in this place, because it's a chance to you know kind of give a face to either something in their past or tell a story or whatever. So each one of them's telling their own scary story. They had a lot of fun with the first episode. I think they said it was the most jump scares in a certain amount of time in the first episode,
Hmm.
which doesn't happen again. Like they don't lean on jump scares, but if jump scares gets you, if jump scares get you, there we go. The first episode will get you like it, something like
They do.
27 jump scares in like 3 minutes or something like that. It's
Oh God.
crazy. Um, and but it's fun. It's not overwhelmingly scary, but it has an interesting storyline. You start to get into the backstory of this hospice and what happened there in the past. So there is a more supernatural element to it other than just the kids' stories themselves. And it gets into the deeper past of the place and why this girl got better and how she got out and how she left. The very end of it gets a little predictable. I do hope it gets a season 2, because there are places they could go, which is interesting when you think that all the characters could potentially die at any time because they're all terminally ill. Um, and what's good and sad about it is that they don't shy away from letting one or two characters die. They're terminally ill, like,
Yeah.
so they keep it a little real in that regard, and they do let a few characters die, because it impacts the other characters in the show, even though they all know they could all die. They're all 18 to 20. They're young. Um, but it's overall it's a good show. So the biggest reason that I watched it is it's Flanagan. It's Mike Flanagan who did um
House.
the haunting shows. He did Bly Manor, Hill House, Midnight Mass. Um, and it was interesting because the way it opens up, it opened the second it starts, you're like, this is a YA show. Like it doesn't have the same gritty like camera work. It doesn't feel like it just doesn't feel as adult as even the first few minutes of Hill House, which is the first one Flanagan did on Netflix. But at the same time, like there's a lot of sensibilities to the story where you're instantly like, okay, this is Flanagan's work. So it was interesting to see. I think he worked with somebody else on it too. I don't think it was 100% Mike Flanagan. But I think he has Flanagan has kind of fallen in love with Ro Coley, from iZombie. If you ever watched iZombie,
I don't think
and
so.
he
But
was the
is he a
sheriff in
sheriff?
Midnight Mass.
Okay, I like him. He's really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love him, and he's hilarious. Like he's funny. He's kind of like Marina Sirtis, and he's in that he's got some spunk. Doesn't really give a shit if people like what he has to say or not. He just kind of spouts off um, on social media and stuff, but not necessarily in a bad way. Just he says shit, and he's like, if you don't like it, you don't have to follow me. You can go. He's a big nerd. He paints Warhammer
Nice.
miniatures and stuff. Um, but he was in Bly Manor, then he was in um, Midnight Mass. He only has a small cameo in this one. He only plays a part in one episode. I mean, it's not a part that would continue on. But he is going to be in Flanagan's next show, which is The Fall of the House of Usher,
Right.
with Mark Hamill and like tons of people. Like, so
Okay, I'm
I'm
in.
stoked for that. But this one, like I said, this one definitely has, it's definitely YA, but at the same time, it definitely has a Flanagan feel to it. So it's an interesting mix of genres. I don't think if it wasn't Flanagan, I don't think I would have watched it, just because it's definitely, like I said, YA. But it worked. It was fun. It was interesting. The story was good. Like I said, predictable at points, but it was good.
Cool.
Um, so yeah, I'd recommend it if you got the time. And
Definitely
then
noted.
we can we can finish our incredibly long rant with our usual finale, which is all of the popular shows that we've been watching. I think we just did. You watch the finale of She-Hulk?
I did. I did. And honestly, I liked it. I liked it. I especially for me the first half of it. Um, you know, and I think that the single my single favorite moment of the entire series is when she goes into the menu of Disney Plus. That was like that was my favorite. My second favorite was the opening of the
Yes.
original
Oh my
Incredible
God, the
Hulk
opening
movie.
credits.
Oh,
So
I
like,
was go.
well, I was gonna say, I think younger kids won't get it. Like
Yeah.
they won't understand. Younger people won't get it. But from our age group, my mom always tells the story. When I was young, The Incredible Hulk was on with Bill Bixby, and when he would change into the Hulk for whatever reason, like me at like 4, 5, 6, whatever, it would scare the shit out of me,
Yeah,
and I would hide while he was turning into the Hulk
me too.
until after he was the Hulk. Um,
On the couch saying, "Oh my
yeah,
god, oh my god, oh my god." And for me, the
yeah,
scariest part was as soon as the eyes, the ding, I'm like,
right,
out.
yeah,
Out.
yeah, yeah. Shit was scary.
Once he's done changing, I'm okay.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah. Then you're
just
like,
the
he's the Hulk.
change.
So those
Oh
opening
man.
credits were great.
Yeah, so
Um,
that was dope. And I liked the fact actually that like I like the fact that homeboy, whatever creeper dude, fetish dude was like Cult King. I was like, okay, that's a good twist. I like the fact that, Abomination, like he didn't mean it, but he's taking jobs wherever he can,
yeah,
and but then it's like, no, like this is lame, this is cliched, and all of a sudden, like, okay, it's lame and cliched, but then like you end it with a very kind of blah ending. Like, I don't
yeah.
know,
Like it
you
was
put
just like
together
she's
some
like, we're going to
whacker.
resolve these issues. We're not going to do this thing, but we're also going to end it in 1 minute afterwards. I was like, you didn't go back and tell the story that you were undoing. It was just over. And that's probably my biggest complaint about the episode. More so, like, I know watching it with my family, everybody in my family was like, this is bullshit. Like they hated it. They hated the fourth, but they've all struggled with the fourth wall thing the whole time.
Okay.
Um, because for some reason, when they do it on the show, it feels more in your face than Deadpool.
Yeah,
Like just from the beginning, it's always felt a little more in your face than Deadpool. And um,
which almost makes it
eh,
like it's trying too hard.
exactly. Um, for me, there were things about the episode that I really enjoyed, but I think the way I described it in our chat was, for me, it was the parts were greater than the sum. Like
Yeah.
I liked things about the episode a lot. I didn't like the episode itself as much as I liked those things. Like there was like, I don't know how I felt about the whole Kevin Feige thing. I thought it was funny, uh, but it was a little over the top for me. But at the same time, like there were some hilarious jokes in there. Like there was
So
some funny shit in there.
so my thing was I thought it was cool, but then like if you could see my interest or my value, like I was losing me within the dialogue. Like it was cool, everything was going up, up, up. Like she's beating down the security. She gets to the room. and then he finally meets Kevin, but then as she's talking, I'm going, okay, this is kind of lame. Like I'm losing it. Yeah, that's where it lost me. That was where the episode lost me, because I don't. I think even Kevin, like, he even says, like, there's an article where, can I read this really quick?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
where Jessica Gao told Variety that conversation between Jen and Kevin is very much a relationship that I have with real life Kevin, and a lot of that is taken from conversations I've had with him. And then she goes, that seemed longer in the scripts. If they had let me, I probably would have written a 10-minute conversation of my avatar arguing with Kevin. And she's like, this is probably the tightest version it could have ever been. And there were a couple of jabs where Kevin was like, okay, this is a little mean now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know if Kevin would really be that, like, you're calling him a robot, really? Like, and I don't know. The whole thing, I think at the end of the day, Kevin has to just kind of go, you know what? I'm one dude. Yes, I am God, but like, but I can't have a world without people with their own fucking brains to do whatever they want. Not whatever they want, but just do what they do best. But I don't know. Oh, and then she goes, the fact that we were able to predict what the reaction was going to be, what a lot of the trolling comments were going to be, really shows how very tired and unoriginal these trolls are. That really tickled me, because the little troll that lives inside of me really loves trolling the trolls. And it's kind of like we talked about in the beginning of the show, or the pre-show. Like, okay, if you're trying to be like, let's say, and I know Miss Marvel and this show are different because Miss Marvel is serious, this is a sitcom, but I still think you can tell poignant messages with a sitcom, i.e., The Good
Mm-hmm.
Place. But anyway, if you're trying to be sociological and make a change, in my opinion, you don't make a change by doing exactly what you're criticizing. You do it by going higher. Again, that's my
Mm-hmm.
own personal opinion. But I know that Michelle Obama says, when they go low, you go high. And she's a feminist, I think. But I
Yeah.
just think that, I'm just not sure what the show accomplished. And that brings me to another point, if I may.
Oh
Kim, I
yeah.
wish you were here. Um, I know with the whole Bechdel thing, we talk about how women shouldn't be so obsessed with a man, okay? But I feel like this whole show was about her finding a man, and she finally finds a man in Daredevil, okay? Which
Yeah.
brought me to another point. Why is it that with women, and you might cut this part out, with women, it's always about this like revolving door of men, because men are so lame and tired. And I finally found one, okay? But with male superheroes, it's usually, no, they're not going after a whole bunch of women. They're after one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. So they're actually decisive. And then number two, they're either like, oh my gosh, she's the object of my affection, or she's something I can never have, or she's a distraction, or she's someone that's like going to be in danger if I let this happen. But it's never like this revolving door of almost making women like this commodity that's defective. Whereas I think that when the roles are reversed, it is like, oh, men are so lame, blah 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 blah. Like, what's up with that? And it just made me wonder. But ultimately, it's like, why is it that snagging Daredevil is like the end all be all of your existence? I think there's even a line in the show that talks about, oh, well, yeah, we can't be end game, but this is your end game. Like, this is like, what happens to your personal life is high stakes too, but it's for your life. I gotta find it again. But I just felt like, I don't know, man. It just, I don't, what is this show trying to say? All right, I'm ending like this.
Exactly. And I think in that same article that you're talking about, Tatiana Maslany even said, she's like, I don't know if it'll get a season two. She's like, I don't know if anybody wants a season two. Um, which is in its own way is a little disappointing, because I would hate to see it be the end of the character. But I don't know, if the show doesn't go on, can you keep her under contract to just show up a few times in a few different things, and be part of, I don't know, a character on the Thunderbolts or a character somewhere else? Where does she fit in? Um, I've said it 100 times. I love her. I just didn't think the character in the show quite worked. It's really interesting if you look up the show on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's like an 87% critic score, but it's like a
35
35%
audience.
audience score. So, like, I don't know I don't know exactly where the disparity is. I know I've seen people that love it, that loved the
Yes.
show. Um, and then obviously I think across the board for us, it was kind of
Split.
middling. And if I'm ranking the shows, it's probably at the bottom, if not
Yes.
near the bottom. Um, and it's a bummer because there are definitely things about it I like. I love the supporting cast. I like her as an actress. I think my biggest complaints haven't changed. I wish the episodes were longer than 22 minutes. Like I don't think they got to develop their storylines in the time that they were given in each episode. Um, and I wish that they had kept her as Jennifer more often. Um, because number one, the CGI wasn't great, but number two, it was just always maybe it was too goofy. I don't know. I don't know quite know what it was that turned me off about it, but I didn't hate it. But I also didn't love it. So
Well, that's She-Hulk, and
yeah,
it's over, and
we
we'll
never
move
have to
on.
talk about it again.
Yeah.
Um, see. So the next one I have on my list here for our run here is Andor, which is nowhere near ending apparently when we looked it up in the
Thank
pre-show,
God.
because this is the sixth episode. There's 12, so we're at the midway point. With no break, by the way. Even though we're at the midway point, it just cranks on through. It runs all the way through Thanksgiving, basically, till November 23rd. Um, and and this show is damn good. It's a
Yes.
little like it's a little slow. It's not always action heavy, but shit, it's intelligent. It is fucking beautiful, and the acting is amazing. The one thing that I noticed in this most recent, no, a couple episodes back, because I was watching it with the kids, is I didn't notice it the first time, but like the personal transformation that what's his name's character, Eric Selvig from Marvel.
Yes. Skarsgård.
Anyways, Skarsgård. When so he's going through the whole thing. He's battling it out with Cassian Andor, and then he goes back to his rich people shop, and
Mhm.
that whole transformation backstage. He puts on the wig. He does everything. Dude, he looks like a different person.
Correct.
Like it was a trip. I don't know how I missed it the first time I was watching. This time I was like, damn. I was like, that was impressive. Like that's good acting. That's
Yes.
good storytelling. Like
Yes.
very different look and feel
Yes.
to him. Um, and this show is just it's really not missing. I get where the first three episodes were a little slow because they were building up to the end of the third episode, which was the escape, right? And really kicking off the story that we're watching now. Um, in that regard, it actually reminds me of the animated show on Netflix, Arcane. If you haven't watched Arcane, fucking watch
Okay.
Arcane. But the first three episodes are a little slow at first, and then it just like boom, and everything. It's just like in Andor, where all those things that were a little slow in the first two episodes
Payoff.
work because of the third episode, and it makes it so much better. Um, but shit, I have no complaints about Andor. Like it's beautiful. It's a good story. The acting is fucking amazing. Like I'm down.
One of the things that I find really interesting for me is Andor, I think, works a lot like the way Battlestar Galactica worked, in that it's very allegorical, because what
Hmm.
you're watching really are kind of like, it's not, I think terrorist is too strong a word. They're not terrorists, because terrorists are trying to like literally hurt people and destabilize people. They're not trying to do that, but at the same time, they are definitely insurgents. And,
Yes.
so like when they're like going in and like pointing guns at people and like, hands up and blah, blah. And it's almost like it makes you think, because it really is like, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys? Like, it's clear obviously the Empire is the bad guys, but when you see the Empire from this level, the Empire is just society, like it's normal society, and they have money and they have riches, and like, you see like Mon Mothma and like on Coruscant, and they're all just like, and a spoiled daughter doesn't want to do blah blah blah, and it's like, so I'm really kind of interested to see like what they show in this show, because what I also like, I'm all about the gray, dude. I'm all about the fucking gray. Is like when homeboy who's like, oh yeah, my brother had a tree farm and the Empire like got rid of my brother's tree farm, and he's like constantly like questioning Andor's fucking loyalty or whatever. And then you find out like this motherfucker is actually a fucking con man and trying to like get Andor to join, and who knows what the fuck he's gonna do to Andor.
Mm-hmm.
Andor straight up fucking Han Solo his ass, dude. Like
He's like, I don't got time for that shit. You're out.
and I was just like, what? And I haven't even talked about like just the visuals themselves, like whether it's just the sound of the TIE fighters, whether it's them jumping into the TIE fighters and launching, whether it's that eye thing with the things going in the sky. I'm like, whether it's even just the set piece of, I keep calling him Carl McLaughlin, but Carl McLaughlin and his really mean mom. And I'm looking at like all the architecture or whatever, and it's like, this is like the 70s. It's like the 70s, but it's like futuristic 70s. They really nailed original trilogy aesthetics, but it's just like
yes,
way better fucking like everything. But it's that world. And even when you see Mon Mothma talking, in that little parliament, whatever they call it, republic, whatever, that room where Yoda and the Emperor fought, like I know that room. I know that room. So it's like they really, I mean, it's the best, man. Star Wars is back. You know what?
yeah.
And it's funny
Yeah,
because I've been so cynical, but I'm announcing it on this damn podcast. Star Wars is back.
Yeah,
I might have froze, but yeah.
You did for a second, but it was all right. It caught you up. I'll say too, one thing that's really kind of cool is they show the Empire as like a business.
Yes.
Like it feels like
Amazon.
He's right. Like at one point, the dude that's running shit, he's like, this is healthcare. Like we're not an army. We're healthcare. Blah blah. And I was like, I get it though. Like they're doing their jobs, right? Like at the end of the day, there would be people in the Empire that are just fucking getting by, that are just doing what they're supposed to do.
No one in this show besides McLaughlin and the fucking the soldiers seem evil to me, dude. Like they're just regular people. And if anything, like I'm being real. Like, you guys know me. Like I'm Mr. Play by the rules. So if I was in that world, there's a much better chance that I'm just an Empire employee than
You're right. You're just the janitor in fucking the Death Star. Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, now if someone goes, yo, there's some shit going down, and like I might join up, but trust me, I'm not like the first one raising my hand. I need to see some shit before I fucking turn.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yo, they're not. I'm okay. Like, okay, maybe the Empire is doing some. You know what? Here's what I would say. I would say, as long as you don't get in the way of the Empire, you're fine. Like, stop the badness. Like, you're bringing this upon yourself. Control the control.
Yeah. Is what they're doing really bad? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see it.
Like, let's be honest. If you lived on a little planet and nobody was bothering you, and the Emperor was in charge, lightning bolting people up on the Death Star, you wouldn't know. So if your life was fine, you'd be like, this is just life.
Exactly.
Like it.
And they probably have
interesting
news that says, oh, well, those people were planning some shit. Like, they probably have propaganda to make you think they had it coming.
That's one thing that's really interesting is that, so they did the Clone Wars show, but the original run of the Clone Wars was done by a guy named Jenny Tartakovsky, who did Dexter's Lab. He did Samurai Jack, but those ones are different, and they're almost told as like propaganda videos. So like if you watch them, there's a different feel to that show The way they introduce it, every episode is like, it starts off like like they're like the Empire is doing blah 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 blah, and it's a trip. So like you do get to feel with those shows and with this show that, you know, life is just life. Like these people, yeah, there's a war going on, but some people are just getting by. Like they're just doing their job. And they're really kind of removed from the
Oh, yeah.
larger battle. Um, you know, these people aren't worried about Darth Vader. They're not worried about the Emperor. They're, you know, 18 levels down on the totem pole, so they're just, it's just a job for them. They don't know. It's like you've got the Emperor and Vader as like the Illuminati,
Yes.
right? Like they
You
almost
don't
don't
even
exist to
know
these
they
people.
exist. Exactly.
Exactly. And so it's an interesting show.
I love it.
I think, and it's a really cool way to tell the story. And I know from looking at IMDb, um, it lists 24 episodes, so that they're talking about season two,
Hell yeah.
another 12 episodes. I know too that they've talked about maybe this is a four season story that they're trying to tell. So it'll be interesting to see what they do next. And I say what they do next; they haven't even finished the first season, so it'll be cool. I really I dig it. And again, it's so well made. It's so well made. And I will say that Star Wars has the advantage of being a tighter universe. So to have, you know, Dave Filoni's kind of like the Feige over there, like he's kind of overseeing everything for Star Wars. He's doing a kick-ass job. Like they're keeping stuff tight over there. Um, so yeah, I'm stoked for more. Um, House of the Dragon, we got the penultimate episode last week, right? Like tomorrow's episode is the finale, I think.
Tomorrow's is the finale.
Um, and man, it's a good show for sure. Like I don't dislike the show at all, but the one thing that I've said a few times about it is I do struggle with the time jumps. I feel like it just feels like they're leaving so much story on the cutting room floor by jumping ahead that we're not seeing the character developments that I think we deserve to see a little bit when you're telling these stories, especially with these characters. Like if you take, I mean, they aged Damon what 20 years over the course of the show,
Wow.
give or
I'm not
take.
that good at, I mean, it sounds right, but I'm not that
Yeah,
good at that.
I'm kind of spitballing, but somewhere in there. And there's a lot of development that dude goes through from being, you know, the crazy dude to being a dad to being, you know, and now a dad again, right? Now he finally bagged his niece. Congratulations, buddy. Um, but um it's interesting and it's the difference that I think we pointed out a couple of times between this and Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is a good versus evil, relatively straightforward story. And Game of Thrones always has been politics. Like it's violent, bloody, murdery politics, but it's politics. Like it's somebody trying to get to that next level. Um, the one thing that I'll say too is that uh, Patty Considine has to be at least nominated for an Emmy for
Oh,
what he
yeah.
did as Viserys. Like he was so good as a dude that just never really wanted to be king, was never really good at being king, just wanted his family to love each other. Like he was a decent dude in a shitty position.
Yes.
Um, always like when his wife died, like he didn't want to remarry. Everybody pressured him into remarrying. He picked the safest option for himself, which blew up in his face because his daughter was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Um, and like but he's never been clever. Like he didn't calculate that out. Like he didn't put that stuff together. And so even at the end at the dinner table, you know, in that last episode, he's like, can't we basically he's like, can't we all just get along? Like just for tonight, can't we all just get along? And they try, and then as soon as the adults walk out of the room, shit goes sideways. Like, um, but like, and then do you watch the post show stuff?
I do now. I
Okay.
do now.
So yeah, it was really interesting for them to talk about how, because I don't think I necessarily picked it up, and maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention, and everybody else did pick it up. But how he had the conversation with Rhaenyra earlier in the episode about, I want you are the heir, blah blah blah, and then later on in the episode when he's on his deathbed at that point, and Alicent is with him, and he thinks he's talking to Rhaenyra again because he's so lost, and that's going to set off the next like chain of events that we're going to see. We're finally going to see like the real battle for the throne now because he died.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a good show. I'm very curious about the ending.
So I actually have a feeling that we might end up going all the way to Robert's Rebellion with I think it's Aerys Targaryen, the Mad King, because of all these damn time jumps. Like, season 4 might be that.
Yeah, for sure.
As and I'll just say it as well. I think the reason why I'm so hard on emotional people is because I used to be one. So basically, watching this episode was Viserys' episode. So especially when he walks up to that fucking throne, I was like, you know what, Viserys, I was wrong about you. I thought you were not gonna last. The Iron Throne gave you leprosy. Like, I thought you were gonna get killed by your underlings because you're just too damn soft. But no, you lived a long time. You definitely kept the peace. Like, yes, there was tension, but you kept the peace. And now, at this crazy moment where legitimacy of your heir and her kids is being called into question, you get out of bed, refuse the milk of the puppy, and you actually like demonstrate strength. And then get his motherfucker's head cut off because you have so much respect from even your brother. Because I think your brother was pissed for both, like pissing off Viserys and slandering his wife. Like, you got to go. Okay. Then you insist, despite losing an eye, like, to have a dinner with your family. You get your family together, you're looking around, they're all like smiling, and I'm like, Viserys, you're a fucking G. So literally, I am like Team Viserys all of a sudden, all the way to the fucking end, right in the bed. I'm like, you are just born to fuck up, dude. Like, you can't even help yourself, man. Like, you were this close.
Yeah,
you had one job, Viserys, one job.
Just die with your mouth shut, bud.
And you just like fucked it and be like, Aegon is the like, I'm just like, no. And I get it. I'm being too hard on him. Like, he's fucking dying. He's out of it. But and then Alicent is just like, what? Like, oh my god. And of course, it has to happen this way because we know it has to happen. This show would be boring if it was like just peaceful. But I just feel like Game of Thrones is just like definitely like if it's just like if it can happen, if it's gonna go wrong, it's going wrong. It's just fucking going wrong, and it was painful to watch. But all that said, bravo, great episode, and yes, Patty Considine, I hope is not nominated, if not wins.
Yeah, he's been amazing for all the good performances on that show. He was the constant. Like, he's the guy that was his character the whole way through. Like, he's the guy, and maybe he didn't have as much growth as, say, Daemon, right? Like, Daemon's changed a lot throughout the show, but he sure acted that part like a fucking boss, like down to like him dying, like in the bed, like everything is just, he was great.
Like the fact that even Emma was improvised, like that was not in the script. He just did that, And of course, we all know about the whole crown falling off thing was not in the script. But I also will say that, like, the thing about House of the Dragon, as far as the adults are concerned, is none of them are really that good. Like, they all have shades of gray, but I think Viserys actually is the goodest of all.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think that has to be said. I also gotta say really quick, Aemond, he's gonna be a badass. And I didn't realize at first, like, why are they laughing with the pig in front of them? But then, of course, I remembered like the pink dread, which is a hilarious term, the pink dread. But yeah, man, I'm like, why are you egging Aemond on? Like, you don't want it with Aemond. Aemond would
Yeah.
wreck your shit. Like, he literally beat Sir Kristen, and Sir Kristen apparently is the shit, and he beat him. So Aemond is not to be trifled with. So I predict bad things for um the kids, as in like
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bloody run in this last episode. Um, I'm actually glad that I don't know the story because I don't know who is
okay,
next to take the throne, right? Like I don't know. So I'll find out with everybody else in that regard. Um, but it's good. Like I'm ready for it. I'm ready for. I'm almost bummed that that this is it, right? This is going to end, and then
and
we're
then
we're good for a
2024.
while.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll get something in between though, because I think Jon Snow's show is already filming, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I'm
I could
not
be
sure
wrong
about
about
that.
that, but I know that they're making it. I know that it's in the works, it's in
That's good.
development and all that. So if it's not filming, maybe it will be before
Yeah,
um
season
so
two.
it'll air before the season 2 goes.
Nice.
But yeah, so good. It'll be a strong finale. It's a good show. Again, I think it's drawn unfair comparisons to Rings of Power. I think they're just so different. I know the idea is that they're fantasy and you've got all this stuff in there, but they're pretty wildly different. And so I think if it, you have to know who you are and what your tastes are, and you'll find which one you like more. Like he's not here to say it, but Andy is a huge fan of Rings of Power, more so than House of the Dragon. I tend to like the story bits of Rings of Power more because I feel like Rings of Power is more focused than um, House of the Dragon in that it doesn't have the time jumps. It's not skipping things. Maybe to its own detriment too. Every episode's a little long, um, and it does plod along a little bit at points. Um, but I just with House of the Dragon, I do feel like they missed some opportunities to tell other parts of the story. Um, but it's been a good show, and I'm ready for the finale to see what happens there. So we'll talk about that next week.
I'm not gonna lie. I was scared when Andy said he was coming on board because I was like, oh shit, it's gonna be 2 against 1 with Rings of Power. And y'all are gonna destroy me on this podcast. But now it's just like, nope.
Uh, what is today? Today's the
Is it the 15th? Let me look.
uh, today is yeah, today's the 15th. So last night's
Oh,
episode was the
yep.
finale.
There you go.
So I have not watched the finale. Oh no shit. So episode 7 is titled The Eye. Do you know what the
What's going
title of
on?
the episode of Andor that we just watched was called?
Is it the eye? If it is, that's
Yeah.
cosmic as hell, dude. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's crazy.
I love it. I love it.
That's
The
funny.
universe is a
Um,
trip, man.
so that episode I'm into, like I'm in episode or I started episode 7. So 8 is the finale. And I do know that in episode 8, well, we haven't watched it yet.
You know what? Spoil me.
You
I
know what?
don't
I'll
care.
talk about it when we get there. I'll talk about
Yeah,
it when we get there. So we're not doing it now.
and spoil me
Um,
too. Seriously, I need to just I don't care. Like I need to know what's good, so that way I can just like jump in if I want to. It's all good.
yeah, I'll just say if you liked Lord of the Rings, and I don't understand why some people um, out there are kind of against this, but to me, I know it's not the original Lord of the Rings story, and I know it's not Peter Jackson, and I know it's not exactly what Tolkien wrote, and they definitely took their liberties and blah blah blah. But it's so Lord of the Rings to me. Like it's such a Lord of the Rings story to me, and the world is such a Lord of the Rings story, and it is that good versus evil, well delineated. This is good and this is bad. You know, um, And if you liked that in the first one, I don't understand why some people don't
I can
like
tell
this
you
one.
why, and it's superficial as hell, and but I think I'm self-aware enough to admit it. Um, for me, it's casting. I actually, I want cast like I want to look at, people who strike me as like just kind of cool. Like I think one of the things about Smallville, frankly, is that's a beautiful cast. Everyone's fucking good looking. Okay.
Hmm.
I feel like with House of the Dragon, not everyone's good looking, but everyone still has some sort of like presence or swagger. And I feel like a lot of the Rings of Power people are just very kind of average, and I know it sounds so superficial, but I feel like they don't strike. I mean, yes, that one, I think his name is Arondir, that one elf is like he has a look to him.
Yeah, the black
The next one, yeah,
slash
yeah.
black, yeah.
Exactly. But like everyone else is just kind of like, and then the trolls are almost not the trolls, the dwarves are almost too goofy looking, man. I'm just like, come on, man. Like, put some effort into this shit. And I know, I mean, again, I'm the asshole. I'll take the fall, but I feel like I'm not the only one. I think people like they don't even realize that's the reason, but I feel like that's part of the reason. I think that, you don't, I think, yeah, I think that when it comes to TV shows or movies, you cast people that are interesting or good looking. But if they're just average, and I feel like that's just what happened with this show. I think which is okay. I think like, there's a movement in society now where it's almost like, perfect is bad. We want people to be just real and average and whatever. I like real. I like authenticity. It's cool, but you can still look good or like unique and still be authentic. I mean, what's his name? Fucking Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds is a very good looking dude, but he's also still authentic and real. So
Hmm.
he just makes it work. Sorry, I feel like that's what's hurting Rings of Power personally. I can't believe I said that, and now it's out there, and now people are gonna think I'm superficial.
Well, I mean, but it's not wrong. Like, I think you have your people in that show that are attractive. You've got Galadriel.
Yes.
She is the dude she's traveling with that she kind of picked up on the boat. He's a good looking dude. You've got the elf. But I don't think, why do I always forget the fucking guy's name?
Whereas when you go to Lord of the Rings, the actual movie, everyone's got a look. Like you've got Sean Astin, like he's Sean Astin. You got Frodo, that's Frodo. Like
Yeah,
everyone, like even fucking Agent Smith as Elrond, like he has a look.
Elrond. That's who I could, for
Okay,
some reason, dude. In this show, I could not remember his name. Like it's like his name isn't, but that guy's not particularly
he's
interesting.
yeah,
Like so it is a good point. Like I get that. Um, but the story's there. I think. I wish it was longer for the amount of money that they put into the show for it to only be 8 episodes. Now, granted, every episode is pretty long. They're um
a little over an hour.
like an hour, yeah, an hour plus. So they're long, which is so Lord of the Rings in itself, right? Um, but they'll do a season two. I know that they give up Sauron in the season finale, so you finally figure out it's either one of these people that we've seen, like they've kind of been hinting, like we know that he's in this show, but we don't know which character he is. Um, so that is given away in this scene, and then they're talking about season two. The description that I saw was basically that season two will feature Sauron heavily, and he'll be almost like a Walter White character. Like we're gonna see him become become as bad as he is. Like he'll start to turn, because he may not, at this point in the story, may not be as bad as we know him to be in the Lord of the Rings, which is an interesting take because Galadriel was hunting him the whole time, so he was pretty bad.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with him and how they get him there. Um, but there were some good moments. Like I said, I've only started episode 7, but in episode 6, and if you look at IMDb, that's the highest rated episode. Um, that one's good. Like that one's got some stuff in it. The season finale is actually the second highest on IMDb, so that's promising. At least it should finish on a high note. And to make a comparison to Sauron and Walter White does at least make me curious for season 2, right? Like, I don't necessarily. I need to get there to make sure that I give a damn about season 2, but at least it sounds like an interesting storyline to take on season 2. And then with that, we're probably good to go get some sleep.
I think we are good to go get some sleep. And I gotta say, the last, I think, 2 shows that we did as the East Coast team were on the shorter side. Like, I think they were like an hour and 20 something, like maybe an hour and 20 at the most. But I think this one's actually going to be a good solid 2, which is great, because I think that I think people like it when I'm breaking the fourth wall. No, but like, I feel like people like it when there's actually enough content to warrant the listen.
Yeah, for sure. And I hope I really do hope everybody watching enjoys the Comic-Con talk, because I think that being your first experience, with that, and my first experience with one that big, and then the panels and stuff will kind of light a fire under other people to try and make it to some of these. They're cool events. They're really cool events.
They're very cool events, and I have to say a couple, like, so a coworker of mine called it a freak show because apparently she's not into cosplay, but you don't have to be a cosplayer to go to Comic-Con, number one.
No, not at all. You definitely can't. As a matter of fact, we missed a lot of the larger cosplay stuff in general. The way that this particular one was tiered off, there was a section upstairs that was pretty dedicated to cosplay, so they had makeup booths and stuff like that. I found that on accident before you got there, before we watched the Smallville panel. And there was a little anime section up there, and stuff like that. So it was definitely pretty well segmented. But I didn't feel like I was seeing a ton of cosplayers running around.
No.
And what's interesting is, like, following the con itself on social media, there were a lot of cosplayers there. We just didn't see them. So if that's not your jam, you're probably okay. You weren't really going to bump into them unless you were looking for them. But that floor was chaos, man. Like, going into there and just walking around that floor, it was busy. Place was jumping. But yeah, I recommend anybody that is out there and has the opportunity, go to one, especially if there's just one panel you're interested in.
Yeah,
go for the day, catch that panel, walk around the floor. If it's in a good venue, have some decent food, and maybe catch a panel that you're not so 100% on, because I wasn't 100% on the Back to the Future panel before, and I fucking loved it. It made my whole day. It was fantastic. So yeah, go to a con, be a dork, be a nerd, have a good time.
One more thing. And I also say as well that if you're into merch, if you're into, like, t-shirts, like, or models or whatever, like, there's merchandise there that you might not be able to get anywhere else. Like, so it's like, or signed artwork by, like, your favorite art illustrator. Like, it really is, in my opinion, it's nerd/geek heaven. Might meet your girlfriend, you might meet your boyfriend, you might whoever. Like, I'm just saying, it is literally like, man, I've said enough. You guys get the point. I love cons, and I don't go a lot, but if I have a crew to go with, I'll go. I'm not saying I wouldn't go by myself, but I'm just saying it's better with your crew.
Yeah. So with that, we have covered everything on the planet. We have satisfied everything you could possibly want to hear from us. And so we say thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for downloading if you're listening on the podcast app, which Pete hasn't updated in like 3 weeks, so you're probably not listening yet. But we hope you enjoy the show. Leave us a comment. Again, we're always looking for those. Somebody besides Leah who leaves the best comments, and I love Leah, and I will respond to her every single time. But by all means, somebody else leave one also. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We're always trying to get a little better, so tell your friends, leave us a comment on what would make your friends listen more. And we will catch you next week. Deuces.
I'm ready.
So, yeah. And then for the horror section of our episode,
we were going to talk about Sinister. And I think both of us were, it was cool.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. Then we got Hellraiser.
Oh my god.
I watched Midnight Club.
Okay.
So I thought there was something else, but
well, I know Halloween is out. Like
that just dropped. Yeah, I haven't seen that. But you know what? You know, it's crazy. For as much as I love horror movies, I've never seen any of the Halloween movies. Not a single one.
It's funny you say that because I have never seen a Halloween either. However, I did talk to a good friend of mine who I think one day needs to be on this show. I'm just planting the seed now. He's fucking shit. His name's Chad. What up, Risky? Anyway, he broke it down. He basically said, like, really, all you need to see is 1 and 2, as in 70. I think it was like 79 or 78 and 80. Those are the 2 ones you need to see. And they tried rebooting off of those first. Actually, the first reboot, Halloween, like H2O from '98, was trying to reboot off of the first movie and ignore the second movie. And then this one, like the Blumhouse ones, did the same thing. But apparently, these Blumhouse ones have been progressively worse. Like I actually haven't.
Oh, really?
I've heard a single good thing about this finale. It is the end, but all over my feed, people are like, "Man, are you serious? Like this is how it ends."
That's unfortunate. That's a bummer. Yeah, because I I don't expect great things from a horror movie franchise in the first place, right? Like it's just gonna be. It'll be what it'll be. Like it's hard for, especially a franchise that's been around from that genre. Like every one of those movies around then. So you had Friday the 13th, you had Halloween, you had Nightmare on Elm Street, and all of those. If you look at the first film, in every one of those franchises, the first films have been pretty solid, right? Like they've been built on a pretty solid foundation, and then from there they just deteriorate because they kept pumping them out and they just kept getting more and more ridiculous. And that's how you end up with Freddy versus Jason and Jason versus Predator or whatever, like all kinds of crazy shit they've done. But they all started from a good premise and then kind of fell off. And so I know somebody posted, maybe it was you, but somebody posted a chart that showed like the Halloween timeline and just how wonky it is. Yeah. And it totally branches. Like you said, it starts with the first one and then it's like, well, this one goes this way, but this is a different timeline. And I was just like, get your shit together, people. Like
it reminds me of actually Godzilla, because like I love Godzilla. I think Godzilla is dope. Apparently, like Hulu has like all the Godzillas right now, so I might have to.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, man. Like I might have to like just jump into it. Like as a kid, Godzilla was
like the originals.
Yeah, like all the ones that like just were probably like not available, even the ones that were only in Japan. But Godzilla, the 1954 one, is like the one, and he actually dies in the end. But then of course, you gotta like resurrect him somehow. And all these movies, there's like the Showa era, and then there's some other era. Like there's different eras.
Toho and
and they're goofy and stuff. But then what happened was Godzilla 1985 with Raymond Burr. Like Raymond Burr was in the first one in 54, and then they made another Godzilla in 84. But then when they took it over to the US, that 84 film became Godzilla 85. So that one also was bringing it back from the goofy shit to back to like the serious shit, because the first one was serious. But then even from there, and that era went from like 85 to like 91, I want to say, or 94. and then there was other ones. Oh, and also, as you know, there's Gino, Godzilla in name only. So when the Americans got the rights, the Japanese were so pissed. Apparently, in like the 2001, like the real Godzilla like kills Gino, like in their movie, dude. It's
That's awesome.
hilarious.
That's
Anyway,
awesome.
I'm going off on Godzilla, but yeah, I feel like Godzilla and Halloween have a similar thing where it's the originals and shit, but you have all these branches off of the original.
For sure. I mean, that one's so complex that I don't even know if you could follow it anymore. I know, like, because I've seen the end of the original one, right? So like he kind of disappears in like a cloud of like light at the end, doesn't he? In the original Godzilla when he does die.
Well, it's like
Like
basically what happened was he was it's acid. So like he basically is they release acid under the water and you actually see like bones like he's
oh, okay, I'm thinking of a different
exposed.
one then.
It was a black and white film. Are you thinking of a black and white film?
I don't remember. It's funny enough is when my wife got one of her tattoos in California, and they were playing it in the background of the tattoo parlor. But
Oh,
the
okay.
one that I saw actually was very similar, and you can tell it's definitely older, but very similar to the first of the most recent reboots, right? So in this Godzilla Kong universe that we have right now, the new MonsterVerse,
Man, I love
um,
the second one, by the way. I keep going.
but the first Godzilla film that we have, which I actually liked with Scarlet Witch and Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yes.
Um, I enjoyed that one a lot. I thought it was great. But the one that I saw had a similar feel to it. Like, at the end, Godzilla saves the day, and in that one, he dies, and then um, he basically dissolves into these like little mini stars that kind of fade off
I haven't seen
into
that
the
one
air.
actually. Huh. Okay.
And then in ours, in our recent one, he wakes up and goes back into the ocean, to save the world again, basically, right? Like
I
there
forgot to
there's
mention. Go.
yeah, well, there's branching lore with Godzilla, right? Like
Yes.
there is the he's a badass and come to fuck everything up, and then there's the savior of the planet, and there's
So
all
in
that
the
stuff.
original one, he's bad, and
Hmm.
basically he's a metaphor for the atomic bomb. That's basically why they
Yeah,
made the movie. Like this is what happens when man fucks with nature. You
yeah,
know. Yeah.
and I think that's what the Broderick one tried to do. They just did not do it very well.
Horrible, man. And I was
Yeah,
so looking forward to that movie, man. It was like that was another one of those like Lucy Charlie Brown football shits. Like I was so I if you were obviously not my girlfriend at the time, but if you were my girlfriend at the time, you'd be like, Andrew, will you shut the fuck up about Godzilla? And I'm just like, I know. Like I've been looking for this, like size matters. Like I was so hyped for that movie. And then when I
there
saw
were
that,
things about that one that I liked. Though, like I did like that they did a pretty decent job of making him in his own film a sympathetic character. Like, um, he was being hunted for being alive, basically. Like he didn't have the like environmental awareness that he seems to have in most of the other films, like in especially in the most recent ones, right? Like he has a purpose, like he's doing this thing, he's out there to kill the other monsters, and because they're bad, right? They're eating energy, they're destroying things, and he fucks them up and then leaves, goes into the water. Um and in the Godzilla, was it 90, is it 2000 or was it
98,
95 with it?
98.
In 98, okay. That makes sense. um he really was just kind of marching through, and
But
everybody was like, no,
remember,
we better kill him. Yeah.
Godzilla was a woman. Like Godzilla actually had
Hmm.
little baby Godzillas, and
Laying
we're
eggs
all like
at the end of the film.
raptors. You brought raptors into this? Like I don't know. I was done. I was just like, this is whack. This is like A doesn't even look like Godzilla.
Yeah.
B he has babies. Like I don't
Yeah, it
know.
was it
I
was
was
like Godzilla meets Jurassic Park. Like he
But you
found a
know what?
way.
I am gonna watch it again now that I'm done because I live in New York now. So I think when you actually recognize the sets, it means more. So you
Yeah.
know, I love how these podcasts, like actually like bleed into my real
trigger
life.
something.
Oh my god, dude! Like I'm so gonna watch this shit now.
Well, he at the end he lays the eggs in Madison Square Garden, doesn't he?
I mean, you're probably right. I was too. I mean,
Yeah,
that was back when I was in Santa Barbara, so I didn't know
yeah,
what the fuck everything was.
yeah. I
And
think
then
it's
New York
MSG.
before.
Um, so yeah. I remember not hating it as much as other people, but at the time, I didn't have a reference point. Like I hadn't watched any Godzilla before that, so
Oh,
um, it was just there. And I went to see it with my friends, and I was like, oh, it's cool. They made him, sympathetic, blah blah. Watched it, it was over, and then it just kind of disappeared. Like I never watched it a second time.
same.
So I'm sure it's not good. I'm sure if I watch it a second time, I'll be like, ooh, that didn't hold up. But I like that the current one, they made him look like the old Godzilla. Like
Yes,
I mean, he's well animated. Like it's definitely a
CG.
little more lifelike, but at the same time, it doesn't look that different than dude in a suit. Like
Exactly.
it worked really well. And as long as you remember when they're making these that they're big monster beat 'em ups and you don't get attached to the human characters, because that's where the flaws are in the most recent films.
Oh my
Is for
god.
sure if you're following the human storyline, this is complete bullshit. Um, because I think when I watched King of the Monsters, it was like, is it 5 years later, 10 years later, and they have this plane that's basically a flying city in like 10 years, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like just because these monsters show up, technology advanced so fast that we're like, there's all kinds of problems with it. Um, so yeah, but if you take them for what they are, they're a lot of fun.
Oh my god. So two things. Number one, so as a kid, did you ever get exposed to like the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla? Because that's where my love affair started.
I know I did. I
Okay.
don't remember it very well with Gadzookie and all that shit.
Yes, dude. You do remember
Yeah.
it. We got to. Okay, up from the depths, 30 stories high, mean,
Yep.
green, and standing in the sky, Godzilla. Anyway, so
And there was the family like on a boat that was
yes,
following them
man.
around,
And they have a
right?
little
Yeah.
like they actually they can call him and shit. And there's one
Hmm.
episode where Godzilla actually gets his ass kicked by these like statues that come alive and they have like four arms. I remember as a kid, I was shook. I was just like, I every time I saw a statue with four arms, I was scared because like if they can kill Godzilla or at least beat him up, they can beat me up. So I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I need to find that again somehow. And for some reason, oh, I was such a kid. Like I actually made up my own monster. His name was Kalopipus. I think he was even bigger than Godzilla. Like I just that's just anyway, that was random. I had to get out. Second thing I was gonna say though was King of the Monsters, I thought was just such a visual treat. I mean, when you see
Hmm.
Rodan flying and like every time he flies over something, like everything burns up and even the fight scenes, like oh my god, the fight scene is like I think it's the North Pole or something where like Godzilla versus Ghidorah.
Yeah.
And then the only thing I didn't like was how I think it's Ken Watanabe, his character didn't need to go out like that. Like he was one of the best parts of the first movie. So for him to go, I mean, it was a great way to go out, but it was like, yeah, we're just starting to like you, man. Like, why you got to go out, man? Like, shit.
Yeah.
Great score. Um, I love that we weren't even planning to talk about Godzilla, but we talked about Godzilla.
And we
Now
got
I get
there.
to be able to say Godzilla in the headline for like when we talk about what's in the podcast. But we could probably move on now. I apologize. Thank you for
Yeah.
indulging.